Hello, hello. My name is Alicia, and I am the Artistic Director at Peninsula School of Art in Fish Creek, Wisconsin. I am delighted to introduce our newest cohort of artists in residence, Lauren Krukowski and Emma Lacy. Lauren and Emma join us for 6 weeks in an immersive experience that prioritizes time and space to experiment and pursue new projects and ideas. Today, we have the opportunity to get to know each of them better through brief image presentation. First, we'll hear from Lauren. Lauren moves fluidly through hand paper making, printmaking, and textile processes. She stretches objects and ideas from her immediate surroundings beyond the familiar and expected. Her work is a collection of everyday moments of awe, starting with small acts of paying attention. Lauren was the 2024 to 25 West Bayview Foundation Fellow at Dudon Paper Mill in Brooklyn, New York. Previous awards and artist residencies include the Stanley Award for International Research Fellowship, Gutenberg Arts Space and Time Artist Residence, and the Jerome Foundation Emerging Artist Fellowship Residency at Anderson Center, to name just a few. Lauren earned an MFA from the University of Iowa and a BFA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. A Joseph Robert Foundation grant is supporting her pen art residency. Take it away, Lauren.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here and to be making work at Pen Art. I'm starting my presentation with some paper and fabric monotypes I made in the fall of 2023 as I was starting my third and final year as an MFA at the University of Iowa. I studied printmaking and papermaking there. My BFA degree was in drawing and painting. And I also have a lifelong background in textiles, mostly learning from my mother. And the textiles have come in and out of my work in other mediums. But over the last 2 years, they have firmly taken to the forefront of my studio work. Collage has been an integral part of my work for many years. I brought sewing back into my graduate school work as a solution to joining together handmade papers with different shrinkage rates. The stitches gently hold the papers together and allow different papers to expand and shrink as they take on moisture from the air and kind of move and cockle as papers do over time. This work is called Coming and Going. It's a sewn collage from two monotypes, one oil monotype on printmaking paper in the background and a trace monotype from on a cotton t-shirt in the foreground. During Terry Conrad's textile printing class at the University of Iowa, visiting artist Susan Matrician gave us a demo on painting and screen printing with fiber reactive dyes. This demo was like a huge epiphany for my work, being able to make dye printed textile yardage. And I primarily use thrifted fabrics and textile industry waste. Collaging and sewing. My painted fabrics really reminds me of the quilts I grew up around. I had one above my childhood bed, and my mom decorated the walls of my childhood homes with quilts. After living in Brooklyn, New York for almost a decade, moving back to the Midwest for graduate school really started to unearth connections between my younger and current self. The artwork I grew up around, the artwork I grew up making started to inform the artwork I made in my final year of grad school, and also the work that I continue to make now. This work is titled Woven Screen Holding On. The main structure of the work, the area that is maroon, is dye printed and painted canvas, which I cut and then wove strips of my own handmade paper and also woodblock prints on fabrics. From about like 2015 to 2020, I was working almost exclusively with color and shape in my work. But in grad school, learning how to make lithographs and etchings, I started bringing line and drawing back into the work. Gridded lines really became a starting point to play off of. Grids connect the mediums that I use, printing, press beds, silkscreen mesh, the weave of the textiles themselves, and paper making molds. The grids in my work reference screens, the history of textiles and abstraction, and my interest in depicting light using color and forms that resemble windows. Windows divide and they connect. Depending on the time of day, they let light in or out. Screens let air move freely, and sounds, smells, and shadows. This work, titled Screen, is a multi-layer collage with printed silk and oil monotype on printmaking paper. Windows and screens are transparent in different ways. The looser the weave of the screen, the easier we can see through them and the more light it lets in. The tighter the screen, the more it keeps out. Our eyes have no trouble focusing on a window screen and what is behind it, but cameras struggle to focus beyond the mesh. It feels as though you need to relax your focus and simply just experience to see behind the grid. While in graduate school, I often sent just casual photographs taken through my front windows and door to my partner who was still living in Brooklyn, updating him on small moments in my day. This photograph here is taken through my front screen door. It usually took me a couple of tries of working against the screen and finally giving up and opening the door to take a clear image. Looking through window screen mesh started to bring up questions of transparency and opacity, and also the instability of perception. In a photo, a screen door abstracts the image behind it. It flattens what is beyond to a blurred form of color and light. Abstracted, obscured, simplified, and resisting full transparency. The screen door where I lived in Iowa had definitely seen better days after what must have been years of use by people who lived there before me. The woven wire threads were both bent and torn. This work, titled Screen Door Quilt, became an exaggerated abstraction of my apartment screen door, an exaggeration of light and color bending around and through the wavy screen wires, and thinking a lot about transparency and opacity while making this work. Formally, I was thinking a lot about the choices, the fabric choices, the inks and dyes I was using, and their transparency or opacity. I made an angled shelf to install the work. So just to the right of the installation photo, there is a big wall of windows, and the angled shelf allowed the natural light of the wall scale window to illuminate the work from behind at different points throughout the day. While I was living in Iowa, my neighbor had what had to have been a 100-year-old black walnut tree in his yard that cast moving light projections into my apartment in the late afternoon. You can see a video of that here on the right. I became really enthralled with these moving light shows, and the pink and red grid-like pattern in the work on the left is a pattern I've been using to kind of reference the dappled light. And this pattern has come in and out of my work in the last couple of years. This work on the left is titled Dappled, and I was definitely thinking of the powerful wind and rainstorms that come through Iowa City while making the work, and also the projection of dappled light from my neighbor's tree. So right before coming to Penn Art, I completed a 6-month West Bay View Foundation Fellowship at Dieudonné Paper Mill in Brooklyn, New York. There, I worked collaboratively with the Dieudonné papermakers to help realize artists' work in handmade paper. While I was there, I was also able to make my own work in their amazing papermaking studio. While I was a fellow, I was really interested in continuing to explore transparency and opacity and make work nearly entirely out of paper. That kind of continued the threads I was working on in my textile work in Iowa. Here on the right, you can see an example of a work that is made from multiple layers of pigmented paper pulps of different transparencies. And on the left, you can see me couching a shaped layer of pigmented paper pulp onto the layers below. I definitely continued to think about dappled light and depicting transparency and opacity with color and material choices in this work. Here you can see another version of the dappled pattern, which I turned into a watermark and used to create the dappled pattern on the back of this work, which you can see on the image on the right. This is a two-sided work, the front on the left, the back on the right. A watermark changes the height of the papermaking mold, creating thinner areas of paper where the watermark is and thicker areas in the negative space. One of the larger projects I made at Dieudonné was titled Meadow Constellation Quilt. The work in paper references two moments of awe I experienced in Iowa. One was viewing the northern lights over the Iowa River shortly before I moved back to Brooklyn with some friends. The other was learning about a native wildflower meadow that was planted by university faculty and students to help intercept nitrogen pollution and corrosion from the Iowa River. This quilt is influenced by moments of awe and crossing the river daily. I cross the river twice a day on foot to get back and forth between my studio and my apartment. And also the reality of the river carrying pollution from runoff in Iowa to the Gulf of Mexico and creating a large dead zone. I made the work to sort of sit and grapple with the multidimensionality of my feelings about the river and our complicated existence and experiencing conflicting emotions alongside the hope and awe I also felt from the river. Similarly to my screen door quilt, Meadow Constellation quilt is intended to be installed in front of a window, allowing natural light to illuminate the different layers of the work throughout the day and night, which created a time-based experience that changed throughout the installation period, depending on the time of day or the weather. The quilt is made from a repeat pattern that I drew. The patterning on the quilt is a repeat pattern that I drew, and then I created a stencil that I could make paper with. To me, the asterisks and the pattern represent both the native species meadow and hope, as well as stars and the northern lights and awe. The quilt is made from many sheets of multi-layered handmade paper that I made and then cut and machine sewed together into the pinwheel quilt blocks. While I'm here at Penn Art, I'm really excited for time to play, tangle, and tease out artworks and ideas through making more dye printed fabrics, as well as woodblock prints and collage. And so I brought handmade papers from my Dieudonné fellowship that I'll be cutting and sewing, as well as making some fabric quilts. I'm really excited to be here and immensely grateful for the time and the space that's afforded by the residency. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Also in residence this spring is Emma Lacy. Emma is a Chicago-based artist working primarily in photography, installation, and bookmaking. She recently received a BFA in studio art with a concentration in photography from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Her multidisciplinary practice blends hauntingly kitsch and feminine aesthetics into the ostensibly photographic canon using traditional photographic techniques. By fusing these techniques with feminine crafts like hand sewing and crochet, she aims to question patriarchal constructs that dictate the hierarchy of the perfect photograph. Let's hear from Emma.
Hello, I'm Emma, and I'm very excited to be here today to share some of my work with you. So, this first picture was made during my first year of undergrad, which took place inside of my studio apartment, attending my intro to photo class on Zoom. I spent most of my time making pictures with my digital camera, using myself as the subject. I was really interested in creating a narrative with each image, trying to make pictures that looked like stills from a film. Using what lighting was available to me and objects that I found around my apartment to construct little vignettes into a surreal world. I was making work without like any overarching references, just making things for fun. Also, at this point in my practice, I was taking a lot of pictures while I was home for the summer and for Christmas and making prints in the dark room during the semester. I would go on walks alone through my neighborhood, or I would drive to a specific location and walk until I shot a whole roll of film. I saw myself kind of floating around these intersections I saw between girlhood and this feeling of heartache or melancholy. And I was starting to examine the intersections between these concepts. My practice was morphing into a more process-oriented photo techniques, like alternative printing methods like cyanotype and Van Dyke Brown and bookmaking. I started looking for signs of ambiguity, like embedded in the carpet of American life. I would say my work is really rooted in my Southern American upbringing, imbued with like a blend of kitsch and uncanniness and this sort of sentimentality, treating a photograph like an individual, non-reproducible object. In this moment, black and white film became more important and precious to me. I'm very interested in this documentary aspect of black and white. It can be very to the point and blunt, but also possess this like really soft and tender quality. While I was making a lot of pictures at home, in between semesters, during the semester, I was in my studio taking pictures of these small taxidermy bugs. Um, when making these images, I was using a large format camera. The slowness and the contemplativeness that comes with large format photography really complemented the stillness of the miniature scenes. Slowing down the process of image making felt very freeing to me. It felt like an exercise in painting, carefully composing subjects. I feel like large format makes room for more intentional decisions while also leaving room for important and very exciting mistakes. Eventually, these bug photographs found a home in the form of an artist book titled Spilt Milk. And this handmade stat-bound book chronicling the lives of two taxidermy beetles within the walls of a dollhouse I constructed. It serves as both a tender homage and a critical examination of Southern landscape. navigating the intricacies of identity within the confines of heteronormative and religious paradigms. After the completion of this project, I decided I needed a small break from shooting 4x5. I had a lot of ideas for some still life photos, and I was in this mode of making where I needed to see results fast. So I started using a digital camera again. Similar to the way I was working during the pandemic, I started to construct scenes in my bedroom using found objects. My goal with this exercise was to try to just create the weirdest and strangest pictures I could possibly make. The result being nailing a frozen fish to my wall. Later on, I made inkjet prints of these still lives and placed them into this rabbit-shaped handmade book titled Precious Lord, Take My Hand. After I'd spent a few months listening to uh, apocalyptic gospel music, the surrealist vibe of each photograph running parallel in my mind with the futility of life expressed in these hymns. In 2023, I got my very own 4x5 camera, and I named her Kathy after my great aunt Kathy, who was obsessed with ladybugs. I started taking pictures with Kathy in my apartment. I also brought her along on a camping trip to Indiana, making pictures while walking by the water near a campsite. And in between making new photographs and spending a lot of time printing in the darkroom, I had been collecting thrifted wooden picture frames and crocheting frames and constructing each photograph into its own decorative object. Exhibited in the 2024 SAC undergraduate show, Bookmarks manifested as this large-scale sculptural installation uniting traditional craft with photographic techniques. It's a series of photographs taken after the passing of my maternal grandmother. Using these images, I have arranged a domestic altar navigating the balance between remembrance and obsession. The intricate embellishments that I applied to each picture not only serve as aesthetic enhancement, but also facilitate a contemplative interaction with the underlying subject matter. The use of crochet, lace, and wool and wooden frames and wall paneling represent a domestic landscape wherein the pictures find a home. By approaching each photograph as more than just a visual representation, but as a tangible object requiring adornment and embellishment, I found myself delving deeper into my emotional thought processes when I was taking pictures. The pink crochet lace frame that holds this image, the hidden mother, serves as a representation of the nuanced emotional journey inherent in nurturing and caring for an object, the surrealism embodied in the photograph in conversation with the delicate lacework provided me with moments of tenderness and this sort of emotional violence, both of which I conflate with grief. Um, After completing this project, I was left grappling with questions of decoration and framing and how pictures can become a conduit for self-discovery. Flash forward to now, I am still making large format black and white images on these long meditative hikes through nature. And while here at Peninsula, I'm very excited to use the time and space to create more images like this, while also exploring alternative and more sculptural ways of displaying them. Thank you.
Thank you both. If you all are interested in seeing what our residents are working on, please join us on May 13th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. here on the Penn Art campus for an open studio event. In the meantime, keep an eye on our social media for more behind the scenes updates from Lauren and Emma. Thanks for tuning in.